What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content that I'm uploading onto my channel, then feel free to subscribe, and you can also offer suggestions on topics and characters and storylines and whatnot that we can have discussions on later on in this channel.
Okay, so getting into Harley Quinn again for DC Rebirth, we've kind of touched off and on this. And the reason being because Harley Quinn's one of these characters that's a mixed bag. Either you love her character or you hate her character. There really aren't very many people who are in between. Some are just kind of like, well, I mean, I could take her in doses. I'm one of those guys where I'm like, I can read Harley Quinn depending on the story. Not everything that she does resonates with me, but for the most part, Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner have done a pretty consistent good job, pretty good job building her character and making her into something unique. And the reason why I say this is because we had talked about this when it was like Harley Quinn against zombies, that it was this notion of taking her character and turning the Harley Quinn series into this kind of like home for misfit toys, so to speak, in the sense that, I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, DC's done that historically. For example, after Crisis on Infinite Earths, we got Justice League International, and it was DC saying, hey, here are the characters whose comics you would normally never read on their own. Instead, we're just going to throw them on a team. We're going to see what happens when we mix up these weird personalities from these different characters as they've been written before, and hopefully something good comes out of it. And a lot of good came out of Justice League International. It started to drop off as time went on, hence the return of the traditional Justice League during Grant Morrison's JLA. But the fact remains that for what it was at the time, people absolutely loved it. With Harley Quinn, it's much the same way. She's always been a character that in a lot of ways was tied to the Joker. And the goal of Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner was to remove her from the element of the Joker and say, who's Harley Quinn when she's her own character? And the result is that she became one of the most popular titles in the New 52 going into DC Rebirth when it came to DC Comics. She was kind of the standout star, and even right now in DC Rebirth, she's one of the top selling titles they have. So a lot of people really love Harley Quinn. And the reason for this is because of the fact that as we get into this, we basically pick up with Harley Quinn like in her classic suit. And it's really cool to see this. The Batman, the animated series, Harley Quinn being introduced to DC fans everywhere for the very first time, seeing this classic version of her. The problem with this is that she wakes up because Egg Fu suddenly comes out of nowhere, and she actually throws a dagger at him and ends up cracking his shell. Now, for those of you guys who don't know, when it came to the Harley Quinn title, what Amanda Conner and Palmiotti did is they basically made her the superintendent, so to speak, of this apartment complex where she basically runs it. That's how she kind of maintains her income. And the reason why is because it's usually accepted, I don't think that we've actually been given a definitive time frame, but it's generally accepted that the Harley Quinn line of stories as they exist right now take place like 5 years in the future, which is the reason why you see her in New York, but she's also on the Suicide Squad right now in DC Rebirth's Justice League versus Suicide Squad. And so that's the only real way we know how to reconcile that, at least us in the weekly poll anyway, myself, Benny, Sal, Comic Historian, Comic Pop, Cape Joel, that sea monster. We've been talking about this. We've been trying to figure out a way to understand where this takes place. And it seems like it really just takes place 5 years in the future. But the fact remains here that Egg Fu is one of the occupants of this apartment complex. And Egg Fu is, again, just basically a giant egg. That's all he is. He's like a cyborg. And of course he has little appendages and things like that. But with Harley Quinn hitting him, suddenly all the dogs that she adopted in the neighborhood start eating Egg Fu. And so of course she snaps out of the dream and she goes and talks to a guy named Frank, or at least Frank's. It's kind of one of those weird, funny little things here. But the idea is that Frank's just like a restaurant owner. But it's actually kind of cool the way that Palmiotti and Amanda Conner do this, because I don't know about you guys, but for me, sometimes like if you're running into an issue or you have a problem or something like that, it's a lot easier to talk to somebody that you don't know, who you'll never see again, as opposed to somebody that you do know. And the reason why is because if you were to have that conversation with them and then you run into them somewhere, the concern of having, that discussion may make things a little bit uncomfortable. But for Frank, he's just like a restaurant guy. I mean, it's just Harley Quinn talking to a random person. Of course, the deal was she would buy him a pizza and get him a 6-pack, and he would offer his own advice. And the cool thing about this is that it's really kind of like Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, by way of Frank, giving us the idea, the direction that Harley Quinn's stories are at right now, which is to say that after the zombies, after her own little escapades, she feels like her life is spiraling out of control, that she feels in a lot of ways she's returning back to the life that she led when she was alongside the Joker. And it's kind of interesting with that situation, because we would look at that and say, well, if Harley Quinn and the Joker were like the 1-2 punch of Gotham City, of the criminal underworld, then her role was to be the sidekick of the Joker. How difficult can that be? Well, what Palmiotti and Amanda Conner were focusing on was the idea that she wanted to be her own character. And so she was doing whatever the Joker wanted to do, and her life was basically falling to the wayside. And because of that, she felt like it was very much much spiraling out of control. That's one of the reasons why she took off, why she basically started her life anew, was to basically get things back under her control again. And so Frank's advice, or Frank's advice, I love the character of Frank. I love this guy. Frank's advice is to basically just go and relax and chill, go take a vacation. And so we have Harley Quinn and we have Poison Ivy taking up residence in the Bahamas, or at least this little section of the Bahamas. Now, this is kind of a funny situation here because Palmiotti and Amanda Conner had for the longest time toyed with the notion of Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. And it had basically been confirmed that the two of them were in a relationship. And so fans were kind of interested to see where this went, because with Harley Quinn's character, we'd seen her act alongside a lot of other lead female characters in DC Comics, and it always came out pretty well. One of the most popular team-ups really with Harley Quinn was Harley, Catwoman, and Poison Ivy and Gotham City Sirens, a publication that ran for, 22, 23, 24, maybe it was 26 issues between 2009 and 2011, written by Paul Dini, and it was wildly popular. In fact, we're actually getting a movie based on that, which I'm really excited about. But, it was really this idea that Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy always had something special. And so to sort of see that confirmed, by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti and their run up to this point, to see the two of them forming their own relationship was always a really fun and an interesting dynamic that really changed the Harley Quinn landscape because it grounded her. But the other half of this is that we're actually encountering a guy named Cy Borgman. Now, Cy Borgman was basically the one that gave them this place to stay, this condo in a place called the Colony. But Cy Borgman was introduced in Harley Quinn #4, I think. I want to say he was either DC Rebirth or the New 52. But Cy Borgman was essentially a guy who was really like an assassin at one point in time. He was like a spy. He ended up having a bunch of, his limbs blown off and so on and so forth. But the actions of Harley Quinn, as she pertained to him, was basically finishing a contract that Cy Borgman himself never got a chance to finish. But because she came out on top, because of her efforts to assist Cy Borgman, he's more or less become a strong friend of hers. And so because of that, he's like, hey, look, if you guys want to take up residence, you guys want to relax, I can give you a place to do that. The problem with this is that it's basically a nude colony. Now, under normal circumstances, it wouldn't be bad that it's a nude colony. It's just that it's a nude colony filled with old people. And so it's it's an issue because there's a bunch of old naked people running around. But again, the cool thing about this is this focuses really, really heavily on Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy, but it's also Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner saying the Joker is going to come back. The Joker is coming back here. And the reason why this happens is because of the fact that the two of them have a conversation that had basically been stalled. There was one point where Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy were having a discussion, about a package that Harley Quinn had found, or something that was supposed to be delivered to her. But the conversation was cut short. And when Poison Ivy basically asked, what was it you were going to say? Give me the whole spiel here. Harley Quinn says that she was basically sent to stop people who were stealing mail. But when she went through, or at least when she stopped those guys, she found an envelope that had been sent to her from Arkham Asylum. And when she opened it up, it was one of her evaluation sheets. Now again, this is Palmiotti and Amanda Conner kind of hearkening back to the early days of Harley Quinn. And the funny thing about Harley's time when she first became the therapist in Arkham Asylum is that different people have done it different ways, and they've depicted her different ways. There were some writers who depicted her as basically being a sociopath, that ever since she was young, where it was presumed that she had been abused by her father, that she was someone who basically used people for her own ends, that she slept her way through school so that she could get the degree that she needed, that she manipulated and tricked people when she was at Arkham Asylum to rise through the ranks, and that her having such a dubious set of motivations in terms of how she dealt with people ultimately led her to being attracted to the Joker. There were other people who depicted Harley Quinn as somebody who was just caught up in the charismatic nature of the Joker. And that seems to be the direction that Palmiotti and Amanda Conner are going here, that Harley Quinn, when she initially shows up, is very professional here. Her first encounter with the Joker is very professional. She's basically just asking standard questions. Now, of course, the Joker's doing what the Joker does. This is why we love the Joker, because you never know what's going to happen. The Joker's like a box of chocolates. They'll probably kill you with Joker toxin. I would never accept a box of chocolates from the Joker. I would never eat those. But the Joker's kind of a mixed bag in the sense that, for him, it could go any direction. I mean, that's one of the reasons why his character's so popular, is because Scott Snyder is like, here's the really dark, the really, really screwed up, sadistic Joker. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I loved that version of the Joker. But at the same time, we get Steve Englehart Joker, who's crazy as hell and wants to copyright fish. We get all these different versions of the Joker, the way he's changed over the years, and each version adds something new and unique to the story. But this version version of the Joker is very manipulative. Now, in terms of what led him to manipulate Harley Quinn is not really explained here. Instead, it's really just this notion that the Joker's basically taken to her, in the sense of the Joker tries to turn the tables on her, tries to mess with her head. But this is how the Joker works, because it's not like he hits you over the head with a sledgehammer and suddenly you're under his control. It's subtle manipulations that take place over time. It's a war of psychological attrition. It just goes on and on and on and on until eventually you just can't take anymore, and eventually you just give in. And that really seemed to be what happened with Harley Quinn. That seemed to be the direction that Jimmy Palmiotti and Amanda Conner were taking, where they basically said throughout all her meetings, the Joker basically kept saying, hey, look, you're shackling yourself. You're constraining yourself to the realm of sanity. You got to break free. You got to get out there. You got to be the person you were meant to be. And while on the surface with this initial encounter, Harley Quinn dismisses it and just considers it the ravings of a madman, as time progresses, it begins to take a toll. And she begins to believe that the Joker's right. And eventually she's swept up in his madness. And so, while she's going through this discussion with Poison Ivy, they're all suddenly met by the arrival of old people. All the old people just start skinny dipping in the pool and start playing volleyball. Now, the crazy thing about this, and this is one of the reasons why I like this so much, is because, even though it is a bunch of naked old people in a pool, which is a little weird, it looks like some of the most fun that you could ever have, playing volleyball in the pool. But, Harley Quinn's just kind of enjoying the moment. She's celebrating the moment. She's relaxing. It really is legitimately a chance for her to wind down. And as the experiences that she's had as she's been written, it's really what she needed. The problem with this is that the following week, when the vacation's up and it's time to go, Poison Ivy is always a little, is a little bit distant here. And the reason why is because the idea was that Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy were supposed to move in together. And of course, we get the spiel. We get the "it's not you, it's me" speech. And that's really what happens here. Harley Quinn says, hey, are you considering, the idea of us moving in together? Have you thought about it? And Poison Ivy says, and anytime there's a conversation like this, in a perfect world, I would. Well, then things are going to start going downhill from there, because it's the Green Mile of breakups, basically the Green Mile of breakups. It's setting on that path and the end is nigh. And so, Harley Quinn takes it with grace. She basically says, okay, look, I guess that's the way it is. But for her, this is devastating. And the reason why it's so devastating for Harley Quinn is because you got to keep in mind, depending again on how people depicted her own story, the Joker was really the first time that she found tried and true acceptance. The problem with this is that the Joker was crazy as hell. And so he was very, very abusive. And she even addressed this in a lot of stories where she said the Joker would make her do things, things with him that she wasn't really comfortable with. He would make her commit crimes. She lived a life that she wasn't really comfortable with. And getting away from that and finding love with Poison Ivy was great, because it made her feel like she could be a normal person. It made her feel like she could have a regular life, or at least a life as regular as Harley Quinn can have. But with Poison Ivy basically breaking up with her, that's not the case anymore. That she's kind of left, with the friends that she has, which of course she celebrates, but the love of her life is basically gone. But what this does is this sets the stage for the Joker to make his return, for the Joker to show up. And he's going to show up while she's in a very emotional place, while she's in a very emotional state. Well, I will say things can go one of two ways, and I will let you guys debate freely on what direction you guys think things will go in. But if you're new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you guys drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.